Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. And today I'm going to be taking a look at Star Citizen Live making missions. And in this Star Citizen Live, they essentially go over the process of how they make the new cargo missions. Now, I've heard from Reddit and Spectrum that this is a pretty interesting episode of Star Citizen Live. Now, I'm not going to be reacting to the entire video. I'm going to essentially be editing the parts of the video that are really that interesting and just reacting to the parts that I think are interesting to kind of talk about and have discussions about. So this shouldn't be hour plus video. So if you guys are interested in that and want to hear my opinions on some of these features, hang out with me, settle in, and let's take a look at the updated cargo missions that are coming in 3.24.
What Connor showed me is this.
Okay, now we're getting into the video. Okay, this is essentially their plan for what's going on with these missions. So I want to hear exactly what they have to say, and then I will essentially give my feedback about
Amazing logistical sheet that he'd been imagining, which essentially maps out all of the connections between different locations within the Stanton system. So as you can see, if a commodity would come in from the jump point and it would need to go somewhere, well then.
Okay, so let's see what is exactly going on here. So we have jump points here, and we have Leo Station, Lagrange Point stations. Okay, and then we have a landing zone, distribution centers, and outposts. So basically, the interstellar cargo routes here are going to be between jump points. Like, if you're going from Stanton and Pyro, and then you're going to have the solar trade lines, which is going from the jump point to the Leo stations. Now, again, this could easily work similarly to going between jump points to Lagrange points, but it also has bi-directional traffic here going from Leo to Leo and from Leo to Lagrange points. Now, I personally think Lagrange points make better deep space distribution centers than Leo stations, but because these Lagrange point stations have refineries, but it really depends if there are going to be other connections between these that have more bulk cargo traffic. Okay, so again, I think this is just a visualization, but the way that they can design it here is they can have traffic come from any direction. Really, it's not static as in materials have to come from Leo stations to go to Lagrange points. Of course, you can take materials directly to Lagrange points, but that will be apparently a different cargo volume. And again, I think it should still be a high volume trade line between Leo and Lagrange points, but right now they have it as high volume between Leo to Leo. This is essentially your Hull C owners would be going from Leo to Leo, and I think I personally think adding Lagrange points into that network makes a lot of sense, but because it's like a production location, and then we have landing zones. Landing zones are, again, they're going to be your planetary trade routes. This is marked here by supply grade. This is a similar, quantity of cargo to the traffic between Lagrange points and Leo stations. And then, of course, you have outposts to landing zones and outposts to distribution centers. I think, again, the routes to distribution centers are supply grade. That, again, makes sense. These distribution centers should be able to handle the same amount of volume as a landing zone, and of course the outposts will not be able to handle as much as a distribution center. This is considered small grade, or that local type of cargo missions. Again, all this makes sense. This is just kind of a visualization. Again, I'm assuming they can they are able to make this system a little bit more flexible and do a little bit more with it. But this is really good to see. This is basically the type of transportation network that I wanted them to really delve into a little bit earlier in the game to kind of get these routes in. But it makes sense now that cargo is getting added to the game and you have these cargo missions. So now that we have these cargo missions, it really makes sense to dive into this. And again, before we also didn't have distribution centers, so it would be very difficult to make a system where all the points of interest in this trade network didn't even exist yet. You know what I mean? So now is the right time for this to happen. And again, these outposts are getting updated with their own cargo elevators. We've seen sneak peeks of this where the cargo elevator is at the corner of the landing pad. So because of this cargo update and the outposts getting updated, distribution centers being added in 323, landing zones, some of them getting updated like Lorville's, new Lagrange points being added, the jump point stations finally being added to the game in as well. We have all of the types of locations that can exist. Now, it just has outposts marked here, but I'm also assuming that, certain in systems like Pyro, certain what do you call it, certain settlements might also have facilities to make a local and supply level trading at. It would be very interesting to be able to go to some of these locations, and we've seen this in Pyro. Pyro has landing pads. I did not notice, well, they did not have the cargo elevators at these landing pads in Pyro, so that might be something that they're gonna have to update when Pyro comes out. Strictly speaking, there aren't the same types of outposts in Pyro as there are in Stanton. There's basically no outposts in Pyro. There's only really settlements. So hopefully they're able to update the Pyro settlements to the same standard that the Stanton outposts have with the cargo elevators. Now, we did see some settlements with garages and certain things that were locked, and presumably these locked storage buildings will be cargo elevator locations in the future.
It gets connected to an LEO. And then from the LEO, it could be transported to another LEO or to a Lagrange point, or maybe if it needs to go down to the planet surface, it will go through the landing zone to the outpost, or maybe even if the outpost is closer to a distribution center, go to distribution first.
So all of this stuff is super important. And again, this is something I've been saying for a long time. We need to know what's going on. But at the end of the day, you needed these locations in the first place to tie them together. I think now at this point in Stanton's development, it's at a place where I think CIG is comfortable with saying that this is what is at this location, this is what is at that location. And of course, they can still be flexible and change those things around a little bit. But you need a starting line, you need a baseline, somewhere where you have information that you can reference and pull from. And again, this is basically like the handbook, the resource handbook for the way the flow of cargo is going to work in this star system at the very least. And you need that. You can't start from nowhere. You have to start from somewhere. And this is that somewhere.
In this case, Everest Harbor. And from there, it goes.
And yeah, you could see here it says iron, quartz, iron, copper. They have essentially the materials there that are central to those planets.
To probably the closest or cheapest Lagrange point that has a refinery where the ore is refined and it can be sent over to the different other LEOs depending on who needs it.
Yeah, I want to add in here for the folks who are Many folks are probably thinking the obvious question, well, what about quantum and stuff like that? These are representations of the same type of information that is in there. That's still being worked on, still not quite ready for prime time, but we can take the modeling.
Yeah, and again, this is what I've been saying from the beginning as well. You know, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but quantum is a simulation, okay? It is not the economy. A simulation is different, okay? And a good way to make an example of this is like, you know, flight simulator, okay? Flight simulator is simulating what it's like to be a pilot, but you have to invent the plane first. You can't have a simulation of nothing. You have to build an economy first, and then you can simulate it, okay? So the simulation is just AI creating the missions, okay? But you need the economy first to tell that AI what missions to make. So CIG has to make this system first before they can, you know, have Quanta plug into this information. Again, we have no economy in this game. It's just random numbers. You go out and you buy something, and that's preset by CIG. You buy and sell, and those numbers fluctuate a little bit based on how much you're buying and selling. Again, CIG has stated that that's Quanta, but it's just not, because it doesn't relate to anything. An economy is something that's based on something, okay? You can't just have random numbers go up and down based on, you know, how much things are bought and sold. It's not an economy. That's not how it works. Again, this is an economy where you have, you know, something being produced at a distribution center, and let's say that distribution center is on Microtech, and it's steel, and Houston needs that. You take that material from, you know, Microtech, and you deliver it to Houston, and the prices change a little bit. That's what we have right now, and that's okay, and that's fine, and that kind of works. But when you create a flow of you know, materials based on, you know, everything that's going on in the star system, then it gets a little bit more complex. And so if you don't have any numbers to go on, a starting point, so to say, simulating it doesn't make any sense. Okay, so that's why Quanta, although CIG has said it's currently in the game, it's very limited because the economy is very limited. Once they expand the economy and are able to, you know, there are more nodes, there are more places to buy and sell and trade, and reasons why you do that, then Quanta can actually get added to the game in a meaningful way.
324 stuff. These are, we are showcasing the work that went into creating the very new cargo missions that are part of the upcoming 324 patch. So this isn't a concept for something much farther out. This is the process and the very information we're using to create the next missions that are going to be in your hands.
That's really good to know that it is right around the corner. Right now, cargo missions are not in 324. That's not the focus of testing for Evo Cardi, but when they do get added in, that's going to be huge. I think this patch is going to be a lot bigger than people are expecting it to be, and it makes sense why CIG moved it to a new patch cycle and renamed it to 324, because it's going to be, to be honest with you, based on what I'm hearing from the community, it is going to be a bit divisive, because it is going to mean that there's more time sinks into the game. You're going to have to take more considerations. But I think ultimately for the economy players, this is exactly what they want. It will hopefully bring a lot of those industrialists and economy players back into the game to move around cargo and experience the gameplay loop that they've always wanted. And hopefully that drives more combat players and players who want to do different things in the game back into the game, because there'll be more people playing the core mechanics of what Star Citizen is supposed to be, and that's a physicalized game.
Oh yeah, okay, so we have the progression, right.
This is the grade progression that we've landed on, which is essentially
Okay, so this is interesting. This is the progression loop, how you go through the missions. I want to take a quick look at this. Intro, small grade early, and supply grade very early on the same kind of rank 2 level. Then you have small grade late. This is kind of the small grade end game progression missions. It's at the same level as bulk grade very early. And then beyond that, you have supply grade early, supply grade late. You have bulk grade early and bulk grade late. So you really have to get to rank 6 to take advantage of bulk grade. I think it would make more sense if supply grade late and bulk grade early kind of overlapped, just so you could have more people to take those bulk grade early missions. But I think the way they did that might be because there are, projected to be less of these super large ships, and these are kind of missions that you want to take in a group. I think personally, moving this back a tier a little bit, because again, rank 6 is the final rank. You don't really want to have two stages of missions in this rank, while you have, one stage of mission in every other rank. And rank 4 to 5, you have, again, all of these other mission stages, you have, one rank of mission, versus, bulk grade early and late are both in rank 6. So I think it would make sense to move that back a little bit. But again, that's kind of just my little nitpick. I think other than that, this looks good. This makes sense. Basically, they want you to take the smaller missions before you get up to the bigger stuff. Now, what does this mean for players who have ships like the C2, like the Ironclad? If that is your only cargo ship, I mean, that essentially means that you're using a big ship to move a tiny amount of boxes. And so I think it's pretty logical to think that, okay, well, now if I have one of these larger bulk ships, I now need to go and buy a smaller ship so I could do the intro missions and mid-grade missions, and then I could use my big ship. And that might not necessarily be the case. You might, again, I think it is possible to be able to take a lot of these missions, but you just have to keep in mind that a lot of these intro and smaller entry level missions are going to be taking place on outposts. So again, if you have a hull C, you're not going to be able to take advantage of that. And yes, you probably will need a smaller size starter ship to be able to take advantage of your larger ship, unless you are just interested in trading and not cargo missions, because these missions and this progression is only really tied into this kind of cargo missions. If you're just doing trading, then you could of course still use your big ship. But again, I think it would make a little bit more sense if CIG just slid this back one rank. Again, that's my only critique here. Other than that, I think this looks pretty good. Okay, so they went through the calculations. Again, this is the EVR reward calculator. This is actually not how they're going to do it. It's an algorithm. This is just kind of a visualization so they can kind of show the community how this algorithm is calculating the reward, essentially the aUEC payout that you'll get for doing these missions. So the grade is supply early. That's that, kind of rank 2 entry level mission. That SCU quantity is between 80 and 112. You have the the mission of where you're delivering this, the starting location and ending location, and then they have a bunch of factors that calculate difficulty, whether there's combat risk involved, whether you have to go to multiple locations, if it is going to be a lot of large boxes, that type of thing, if you have to dock and go into quantum and do all that type of stuff. And it has determined that this is kind of easy based on going through all of these factors. So then to calculate the time, you have how much time it takes to load. You have the orbit time. I'm assuming that's flying around in atmosphere. Quantum travel time, how long it will take you the quantum from this location to the other. And fly again, through the atmosphere down to whatever outpost or whatnot it is, and then you have the total time there. And so the ultimate result is how much money that you will be paid for this mission, and that's how they internally get the numbers for the future payouts. Now, future payouts, I assume they're going to be bringing everything down a little bit again, in terms of payout, to get the player base to engage with these systems a little bit more. I think moving forward, it'll be kind of gone are the days of getting 1 million aUEC in drugs from a single, combat mission. Ultimately, that was kind of broken. Uh, it kind of prevented people from wanting to really grind out and play a lot, because money was very easy to come by and there wasn't a whole lot of things to spend that money on. I think moving forward, they're going to implement more systems where money's a little bit harder to come by, so you have to do a little bit more of these missions. I don't think it will become grindy, but you do have to take into account that this is kind of a lower level mission. This is probably, I think 80 to 112 is still kind of high for that early supply mission. I mean, this is a Mercury Star Runner. This is a Andromeda. This is a constellation Andromeda. This is a Corsair. You know, this is not something that you could do in a C1 or regular freelancer, and I think that cargo quantity is too high for such a low payout. For a ship like the MSR or the Corsair, I think a payout around 15 to 20 feels better, even if it's an easy mission, because that is still a decent amount of cargo, and most of the player base is kind of playing with ships around that size, and that core player base is the group of people that you really want to target with missions like this, because again, these larger ships, they're going to be more interested in trading. But the kind of medium-sized ships, the C1s, the freelancer, the regular freelancers and whatnot, these players are going to be more interested in taking these types of missions to get use out of that size of ship. So I think that they should kind of bump up the payouts a little bit more on those earlier, kind of smaller size ships. Because again, if the payout for 80 SCU is 4K, how much is the payout for a ship like the Nomad? There's no point in doing that, in my opinion. You could do it depends on how much payout other gameplay loops give you. But if I had a Nomad, that's 24 SCU, this is 80. You can't take these missions with a Nomad unless you do a bunch of trips. And if you're doing a bunch of trips in a Nomad to get paid 4.2 doesn't make sense when you can do a box mission and get the same amount of money. So you might as well just do a box mission. So I think that, again, this is just a visual representation. These numbers are not final, but I hope it's more like 15 to 20 or 25 even.
And absolutely no number you ever see in ISC or SCL is ever the final number. Ever, 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 ever.
Thank you, Jed, for sharing that. I think that's a very important thing to mention, and I'm glad because I think that that 4K payout is just way too low. Again, even though things are getting closer to the finish line, according to them, 4.0 wise, it's still an alpha. It's still very buggy. I think you should make payouts high enough to keep people interested. I don't think you should, try to put in that level of complexity that you want for the finished game, because hopefully the finished game is going to be a more polished experience where it's worthwhile to go for those lower payouts. Right now, in my personal opinion, I don't think it's worthwhile. And if you're going to do payouts that low, I think people are going to test it. Like, obviously, when 324 comes out, a ton of people are going to flood in and test it. But after about a month, I think those people are going to start leaving if you don't make the rewards make sense. So I think they definitely prioritize the rewards for this thing.
Okay.
Okay, so this number is for a medium mission. Um, Ultimately, again, my opinion is I don't think any of these missions should pay less than 15K. Um, 46 seems okay for a medium mission, but if you look at the cargo capacity, you're looking at 244 to 432. That's not medium in my opinion. In my opinion, again, the difficulty is medium. This is the supply late grade, so this is a lot. So this is basically your caterpillars and your C2s and whatnot. And again, if I have a C2, I can make 100K, you know, in one trip. That is definitely probably going to take less than an hour. And again, make double this trading. And I think that trading should obviously make more money, but I don't think it should make double the cargo missions, because the cargo missions are something you have to progress through. Meanwhile, trading is something that you don't have to progress through. Okay, so there's no barrier to entry to trading, and there's a barrier entry to this, and it's paying out less. That doesn't make any sense to me. So if it's something that you have to progress through, you would ultimately think that it would pay more than um, you know, something that you could just do on your own. Realistically, I think these late game high progression missions should pay over 100K. And that's simply because they need to pay more than the content that has no barrier to entry, because you want a player to want to progress through the gameplay. If there's no incentive to progress through this progression level, people are just going to trade. People are going to get to the medium reputation level, and then they're just going to go to trading, because now they'll have enough money to trade with. But if the progression system pays out more than trading, then people are going to take the time to progress to those higher levels of cargo hauling rather than trading. So I think that's something that CIG should just keep in mind, that they need to make the rewards something that players want to do over other gameplay. And again, because trading has no barrier to entry, there's no reason for it to be able to pay more, and it will be able to pay more, because ultimately the it's comes down to the commodity prices. It'd be game breaking if they messed with trading. It'd be kind of game breaking. I think it would be easier to just make these numbers bigger than to try to mess with the price of every single commodity across the board to make trading pay less. I think that could get really messy for the community very quickly. But that, again, that's just my opinion. Let's keep going.
Or so. We're showing you the EVR algorithm. We're showing you some of the considerations that are made. As far as what the actual numbers will be, that's a thing that, quite honestly, will always be in flux. You know, and anybody who's worked on an MMO in the past.
Yeah, I get that, but I think that there needs to be logic behind the numbers. Don't just change them arbitrarily. Have a target with them. And like I said early on, I think the reason why having the payouts be no less than 15K is you want to compare it to other gameplay mechanics, and you essentially want to create a a system where the player starts out from an even playing ground, even starting point, no matter what career they choose. So, if you choose to be a box delivery person, you're making between 8 to 10. If you choose to be a combat person, you start off at 15. If you choose to, do mining, you start off at around 15. If you choose to salvage, you start off around 15. You want all the kind of introductions into the gameplay to be kind of at an even playing field. And depending on what the player chooses to do, how engaged they choose to be in that mechanic kind of determines how much money they make and how fast they progress. So with these cargo missions, you want to relate how much the payout is to some of the other content in the game. So, it And the reason why you'd want to do that is so that somebody doesn't just choose to do one gameplay loop and essentially min-max the game. Again, it's something that we're kind of seeing. If there's one gameplay mechanic that really stands out and pays more, everybody just does that. Like when Salvage came out on the scene, it paid an exorbitant amount more than any other gameplay loop, so everyone was just doing that. And when you had those combat missions where there were drugs on the ships, it paid out exorbitantly more than any other gameplay loop. So everybody was just doing that. You don't want that. You want there to be a kind of stepped process where, different gameplay loops pay out similar amounts of money so people could choose to play anything they want. I understand that these numbers are always in flux, but what is important for you guys, CAG, to relate to the community is that intention behind the numbers. That yes, these are numbers that we're just throwing out there, but our intention is to deliver this cohesive experience where you're not just wondering, okay, it could be any number. No, it's realistically gonna be in this ballpark.
And whatnot.
So if you get pirated on one of these missions, you could totally ask a friend who's a really good shot to come out and follow the baddies and get your cargo back before the timer runs out.
Or you could just negotiate.
Sure.
And I'm really glad that he said that, again, I think that all of that is a big part of, the emergent gameplay that's possible in a game like this, is that you have all these different avenues of things that could happen. And, Star Citizen is a game with a lot of emergent gameplay. You have the ability to do whatever you want. The thing is that if you do bad things, there are penalties, and if you do good things, there are rewards, but you can do whatever you want. It's not like a lot of other MMOs where they really want to hold your hand and walk you through the entire experience, basically saying, no, you can't do that, or no, you can't do this. Is you can do those things. There's just consequences to those choices that you make, and I like that design philosophy a lot better. And even in the terms of negotiation, there's a thought process that has to go into negotiating when you are transporting someone else's cargo versus if you're trading, because if you are handling someone else's cargo, you have a lot less leverage there. Okay, and when you're negotiating, leverage is a huge factor, but it's something that even pirates would want to take into consideration, because obviously if you pirate every single person at the entry level, then it's going to take a lot longer for people to progress through certain things, and you want to make sure you have a big pool of people that have that high progression level, right? And it's kind of like one of those situations where if you overfish, the fish don't have time to repopulate, and then you have less fish to fish. So it kind of makes sense to maybe extort a lot of the little guys and actually board a lot of the big guys. And so that way, if you come across a small fry, you still get paid out a little bit of money. You negotiate with them, you still get paid out a little bit of money, and then you come across one of the big fish, then you can attack and board that guy. So I think having, again, that ability to choose what avenue you want to do, what gameplay you want to engage in, is the whole point of the emergent gameplay systems that CIG is actually building in this game, and is why I'm excited about this game. It's not a linear experience where if you're a pirate, you have to kill everybody you see. You don't. You, like he said, you can negotiate and build out that ecosystem within the gameplay loop that you're trying to play, and have that, role play experience you want to have that economic gameplay experience that you want to have, and essentially build out the experience in game that you prefer to play.
All right. Well, that about does it for our time. Thank you so much, Yorit and Nick, for taking the time to put this together. We'll be back. Some weirdness.
All right, so that was Star Citizen Live. Very amazing episode. Honestly, one of the best Star Citizen Lives I've ever seen, because they went into so much detail of what this new cargo mission system is going to look like. And of course, I had a lot of critique during this video, but deep down, you guys know me. I'm very excited about this patch. I'm very excited about the information that they shared about these missions as well. This is going to be really one of those patches that brings me into the game. And for a lot of people, it's going to be one of those patches that really allows them to see the systems that CIG really has intentions of making this game, like what this game is going to look like in the end, because you know, the inventory and cargo systems is such a vital part to what this game is going to be at the end of the day. So if you like this system, if you enjoy this system, it's more than likely that you're going to enjoy the finished product of this game. If you're really struggling with these systems, then I don't know, that's going to be up to you to consider if it's something that you could put up with. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I think that with any new system that gets added to the game, there are growing pains. People, you know, like and dislike it, but it's something that you're gonna have to try out and get in your hands and see for yourself. I'm not gonna make too many judgments beforehand because I haven't played it yet, but I think everything that they're talking about sounds good. A lot of these things are things that I've wanted for a long time, so obviously I'm excited to try it out. I think that this will make that aspect of the game more interesting. Again, not everybody's gonna engage with the cargo missions. Not everyone's gonna engage, you know, with trading and hauling and that type of stuff. You could be a more combat focused player, and for you, you're not gonna have to worry about too many of these systems. So I think there's nothing to really worry about. It just comes down to what gameplay loops that you prefer. Again, if you're mostly mining, mostly salvage, yes, you'll have to deal with boxes, you have to deal with the cargo elevator. Things will take a little bit longer, but ultimately that will just make your gameplay experience a little bit more involved, a little bit more deep, and it should make it more fun. In my opinion, it should make it more fun. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I had a lot of comments on my last video, you know, concerns about what 324 is going to play like. People are not too excited. Some people are very excited. Right now it's kind of 50-50, and I want to hear more about what you guys think. What are your serious concerns about this patch, and what are you most excited to see? I think these cargo missions are going to be an absolute game changer, and I can't wait for 324. So that's going to be it for me here today, you guys. Like I always say at the end of these videos, like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Salut!